Wall Street's water war. Why the global elite are buying your water. Your water bill could double while your access shrinks. Not just because of drought, but because finance is turning water into a product. Scarcity isn't just climate, it's balance sheets and contracts. The quiet clause that locks a city into 30 years of rate hikes is coming up. I'll show you the playbook elites use to buy water, how prices spike, and what protects you. We're decoding how infrastructure becomes an annuity on your tap, and how to spot it before it hits your bill. Stay through the end for a simple checklist you can use to audit your city's deal in under an hour. Why water is different, and why that matters. If you mess up food, housing, or energy, you suffer. If you mess up water, you don't survive. Water is biologically non-substitutable and locally delivered. You can't ship tap water across oceans, and you can't skip it to save money. Demand is inelastic. That's why water systems look like natural monopolies. Huge fixed costs, localized networks, and one set of pipes. Those same traits make water perfect for financial engineering. Water systems are capital-intensive upfront. Treatment plants, pumps, mains, but operating costs per additional gallon are relatively low. That creates a classic finance target. A big asset with predictable cash flow if you can control the rates. Investors call these infrastructure-like yields. They want long-duration, inflation-linked, low-volatility returns. Water fits if you can guarantee price escalators and shield them from politics. Governments usually keep water public because it's essential and politically sensitive. But political protections can be sidestepped without selling the pipes outright. Concessions, leases, and service contracts quietly shift control from elected councils to contract covenants. The public still owns the asset on paper, but the contract sets the rules, and the rules prioritize debt service and investor returns. Here's the core model. Embed guaranteed rate escalators, pass-through clauses for chemicals and energy, and coverage ratios tied to debt. Add minimum revenue guarantees, so the system is made whole if consumption falls. Structure it so the city can say no new taxes, while rates rise off budget. Exactly what elected officials want when budgets are tight. Voters watch taxes. Fewer voters understand water rate schedules. Once financialized, the budget fights change. Every dollar competes with debt service and coverage ratios. Maintenance, leak detection, and resilience projects must fit the covenant. If coverage ratios slip, mandatory rate hikes can trigger automatically. Service quality becomes a performance metric with penalties, but penalties are often capped and priced in. The cash flow is the product. Think of 3 buckets: supply, system, and schedules. Supply is drought, aquifers, rivers. System is the pipes and plants. Schedules are the back pages of the contract: rate escalators, pass-throughs, and reserve requirements. Most people stare at supply and system. Finance stares at schedules because that's where returns live. Remember this: the schedules decide the bill far more than the weather. Inelastic demand cushions revenue. If rates go up, usage dips, but not enough to crater cash flow. That's catnip for lenders and concessionaires. Tie rates to an index, CPI plus a margin, and you've got a built-in escalator that looks reasonable yearly, but compounds hard over a decade. Tie that to debt coverage, and you've turned a public necessity into a private bond-like asset. Privatization often doesn't mean selling the utility. Control comes through operating agreements, treatment contracts, billing outsourcing, or availability payments tied to privately financed upgrades. You see the same pattern in parking meters and toll roads: upfront cash or efficiencies, then multi-decade payments with limited public exit options. What about regulation? Sometimes it helps, but contracts can assign disputes to arbitration, narrow regulatory scope, or set formulas regulators can't easily alter. And when a city signs bonds or private debt, covenants can outrank political promises. Bondholders don't vote, but their contracts do. A mid-sized city defers maintenance. Leakage climbs. A concessionaire offers capital, efficiencies, and stability. Rates rise modestly, then CPI plus escalators kick in. A dry spell tightens coverage, automatic hikes trigger. 10 years later, bills are up sharply, leaks improved but not solved, and exit costs are prohibitive. The difference wasn't the rain. It was the schedules. Bottom line, biology creates inelastic demand. Engineering creates natural monopoly. Politics pressures, no new taxes. Finance turns those pressures into guaranteed escalators. See that, and the rest of the playbook makes sense. how investors control cash flow without owning every pipe, how rates spike after modernization, and why maintenance competes with debt service. Next, the playbook, so you can spot it before it lands in your mailbox. The modern water playbook, control without ownership. Here's how control shows up without a sale sign on the pipes. First lever, long-term concessions and leases. A private operator takes over day-to-day management, collects bills, promises upgrades, and pays an upfront fee to the city. On paper, the city still owns the assets. In reality, the contract sets performance standards, fee schedules, and most important, rate formulas. The operator earns fixed management fees plus bonuses for efficiencies. The quiet part is the escalator math. CPI-linked increases, volume bands, and penalties that are cheaper to pay than to overhaul old mains. Second lever, service contracts that slice the utility. Instead of conceding everything, a city outsources billing, meter reading, treatment plant operations, or customer service. Each slice has its own margin and penalty grid. The thing most people miss is how penalties cap risk. If a contractor underperforms, they pay a fee. But those caps are predictable and often far lower than the cost of deep maintenance. Meanwhile, efficiency often means fewer staff, stretched response times, and rigid call center scripts. The bills still arrive, and the rate structure still inches up, but accountability is now mediated through a contract manager, not your local board. Third lever, privatization via debt. This is where finance shines. The operator or a special purpose entity funds upgrades up front and gets repaid through availability payments or a dedicated revenue stream over 20 to 30 years. Those payments are securitized, bundled into bonds backed by your bills. The bonds covenants require the utility to keep rates high enough to meet coverage ratios. If consumption drops in a drought or recession, rate covenants kick in. Prices rise to protect bondholders. Politically, leaders say, no new taxes. Financially, you've accepted a mandatory escalator in the fine print. Fourth lever, skip the pipes by the source. Control the spring, the aquifer rights, or the irrigation district allocations. If you own the upstream water, you can sell wet water or leasing options in dry years. Agriculture gets squeezed because transfer prices can climb when cities bid for reliability. Hedge fund logic turns scarcity into a spread trade. Carry rights at low cost in wet years, then lease at a premium when rivers run low. The result lands on urban bills and farm margins alike. Not because treatment got pricier, but because the input is scarce and financialized. Here's the quiet lever most residents never see. Rate covenants tied to debt service coverage. It reads like this: maintain 1.2x or 1.3x coverage, or implement rates to restore it. That language forces automatic hikes when volumes or revenues dip. It also changes management incentives. Leak detection, pressure reduction, and conservation programs save water but can soften revenue. Under covenant pressure, those programs must be designed with decoupling or new fees to backfill revenue. Otherwise, coverage slips. So conservation gets repriced rather than rewarded. Why does this playbook work politically? 2 words: off budget. Voters hate taxes, so city halls love user fees. A concession or service contract lets officials trumpet upgrades and efficiencies without raising headline taxes. The increases show up as line items: CPI adjustments, energy pass-throughs, new regulatory compliance surcharges. Each defensible in isolation. Over 10 years, compounding does the heavy lifting. And because many contracts shift disputes to arbitration or restrict unilateral changes, a new council can't easily roll back the formulas without triggering termination penalties. Let me show you how the pieces lock together. A city signs a 25-year operations contract. The operator commits to a CAPEX program financed with private debt, recovered through availability payments. The contract includes pass-through clauses for chemicals, electricity, and labor contracts. Any increase flows directly to bills. The bond indenture requires a 1.25x coverage ratio. The rate ordinance adopts CPI plus a margin. If consumption falls below forecast, the coverage test fails, and the ordinance automatically ratchets rates. If residents complain, the city points at the covenant, the operator points at the pass-throughs. Everyone's hands are tied. Now, the game changer nobody talks about is metering technology and vendor lock-in. Smart meters, billing platforms, and proprietary analytics create switching costs. The operator or tech vendor embeds a license, maintenance schedule, and data fee. Even if the city regains operations, it's stuck with the platform, or pays dearly to migrate. That's control without touching a pipe. You might be thinking, can't regulators block this? Sometimes. State utility commissions regulate investor-owned utilities, but municipal systems often sit outside or in lighter regimes. And even, where regulators have teeth, pre-agreed formulas and arbitration venues limit intervention. The strongest check is sunlight, publishing full schedules, not summaries, modeling compounding escalators, and testing emergency scenarios against the covenant stack. If you remember nothing else from this playbook, remember this. Ownership is optional when you control cash flow triggers. Concessions, slices of service, private debt, source rights, and rate covenants form a system. Each piece is defensible on its own. Together, they turn your water into a predictable annuity. Next, we'll ground this with cases where bills exploded and why the paper, more than the rain, made it happen. Case study cluster, when rates explode after deals. Let's anchor this with patterns you'll recognize. A Midwestern city signed a 30-year operations concession with a headline promise: stable rates and modernized infrastructure. The fine print set CPI plus escalators, pass-throughs for energy and chemicals, and a 1.25x coverage covenant on new private debt. Year 1, rates ticked up 3%. Year 5, compounding kicked in and drought shaved consumption. The coverage test failed. Automatic increases triggered. By year 10, typical household bills had jumped dramatically while non-revenue water, leaks, was still well above best practice. The paper, not the rainfall, drove the rise. Here's the parking meter style lesson applied to water. Cities love upfront cash. A famous meter lease traded quick money for decades of rising fees. Water copies that logic with availability payments. One coastal town took an 8-figure upfront concession fee in exchange for 25 years of operations and a CAPEX program. Residents saw new meters and a rebranded call center, great optics. But the repayment was embedded in long-run charges and CPI-linked formulas. 5 councils later, the fee was long forgotten, but the escalator kept compounding, quietly transferring today's political relief into tomorrow's household burden. Now the regulatory compliance move. Deferred maintenance meets stricter standards, and the operator finances upgrades fast: membrane filters, PFAS treatment, nitrification control. Necessary work, no doubt, but the cost recovery walks in through compliance surcharges. They're framed as temporary, yet the base resets higher, and the surcharge often persists or morphs. The thing most people miss is the stack: base rate plus CPI, plus energy, plus chemicals, plus compliance. Each layer seems reasonable alone. Together, they produce a stair-step bill path few families can plan around. Common mistake number 1: ignoring termination penalties and non-compete clauses. A large suburb wanted out after service dissatisfaction and rising rates. The contract imposed a termination payment tied to the net present value of remaining fees, plus a non-compete that limited rebidding without reimbursing stranded investments. The exit price was politically impossible. They stayed, negotiated cosmetic adjustments, and the escalation formulas lived on. Once you sign a deal where exit equals budget implosion, leverage flips permanently. Microstory time. A resident named Maria watched her bill more than double over a decade. She reduced usage, swapped fixtures, and still couldn't keep up. Her street had chronic leaks. Crews patched, but main replacement lagged because CAPEX targets prioritized treatment plant upgrades that improved regulatory metrics faster than digging up old cast iron. Customer service scripts blamed drought, and industry-wide cost increases. The truth was in the schedules: CPI plus escalators, mandatory coverage hikes, and pass-throughs. Staffing efficiencies show up as service transformation. A city on the East Coast outsourced billing and meter reading. The contractor hit headcount targets, but shutoff notices spiked when estimated reads and new billing cycles collided. Meanwhile, field response times stretched as crews covered larger zones. The operator paid small penalties, but they were forecastable and cheaper than reversing the labor model. Ratepayers felt the pain in both service and price, while the contract manager pointed to KPI compliance and the unavoidable escalator math. Another pattern: privatization by performance failure. A utility runs years behind on main replacements. Leakage is high, public trust is low. A private partner arrives with capital and a dashboard. At first, it's an improvement: faster repairs, cleaner water reports. But look at who gets paid first. The availability payment is senior. When a dry year crimps volumes, the covenant demands a rate hike before increasing leak detection spend. Resilience loses to ratios. The operator stays in compliance. Yet the long-term water loss barely budges because the fastest financial wins aren't the deepest fixes. Don't sleep on venue selection and arbitration. One city discovered meter overbilling tied to firmware glitches. They sought broad restitution. The contract funneled disputes to private arbitration with limited discovery and capped damages. Residents got partial credits. The platform stayed. The lesson is simple: where you fight determines what you can win. If the venue narrows remedies, escalators remain intact. You'll also see minimum revenue guarantees. A drought-conscious community nailed conservation, beating usage forecasts. The finance stack backfilled the shortfall through a reliability fee to satisfy bond coverage. Households used less and paid more. That's not a glitch, it's the model. Demand risk moves from investors to ratepayers by design. If you remember nothing else from these cases, remember this: contracts create the staircase. Upfront cash, CPI plus formulas, pass-throughs, coverage covenants, and exit penalties combine into predictable upward pressure. Weather chemistry and wages provide the story. The schedules provide the slope. The fix isn't wishful thinking. It's negotiating terms that put maintenance and affordability before debt service when stress hits, and refusing deals where leaving costs more than staying. Buying the source: water rights, agriculture, and land. Control doesn't stop at the meter. The smarter move is upstream. Own the source, and you set the price of reliability. This is where agriculture, land, and legal water rights fuse into a market. Instead of buying pipes, investors buy priority rights tied to rivers and aquifers, then decide who gets water, when, and at what premium. The utility still delivers, but the input cost is no longer just nature and pumps. It's a contract with someone who profits when scarcity bites. Start with how rights work. In many regions, surface water rights are prioritized by seniority. First in time, first in right. In others, groundwater pumping is governed locally or barely at all. Both systems can produce tradable scarcity. If you hold a senior right in a basin that's overallocated, you can lease water to neighbors or transfer it to cities through a formal process. The thing most people miss is that these transfers often include carriage losses, fees, and timing rules, which turn logistics into pricing power. Now tie this to farmland. Irrigated acreage isn't just dirt and trees. It's a bundle of water access. When investors buy farms in districts with reliable allocations, they aren't always chasing almonds or lettuce. They're buying a water option with a crop attached. In wet years, they farm and earn. In dry years, they can reduce acreage or fallow fields and lease the saved water at a premium to other growers, golf courses, or municipalities. That's a hedge fund logic move. Carry low-cost rights, monetize volatility. Let me show you the dry year option in plain terms. You pay to hold the right every year: taxes, assessments, basic maintenance. When reservoirs are full, leasing rates are modest. When drought hits, the lease price can spike. Selling a portion of your allocation in that moment can offset crop losses or beat farm returns outright. That spread is the business. And once financial players participate, price bands harden around expectations of scarcity. It's not about delivering bottles, it's about timing cash flows to hydrology. Groundwater is trickier. Where pumping is lightly regulated, those with deep wells and capital can extract more, lowering water tables and pushing neighbors to drill deeper or buy imported surface water. When management plans arrive, allocations, metering, fees, rights can become explicit assets. That shift can unlock lending against water access, raise land values for parcels with secure rights, and push others into distressed sales. The lesson: policy changes don't just manage water, they reshuffle who wins financially. Here's the quirk that distorts behavior: use it or lose it provisions. In some systems, if you don't exercise your right, you risk losing it or weakening your claim. That incentivizes wasteful irrigation at the end of wet seasons just to protect paper. Investors work around this with leases and transfers, but the legacy rule still pushes gallons onto fields that don't need them. Reform here, recognizing conservation as use, is one of the fastest ways to create resilience without new dams. Urban users often end up cross-subsidizing through transfer pricing. A city chasing reliability may pay top dollar for temporary leases or permanent rights, then recover that cost through rate surcharges. Farmers sell, urban bills rise, and ecosystems can still lose if the transaction doesn't include environmental flows. If you remember nothing else in this section, remember this. Water rights markets price reliability first, not health or equity, unless the rules force those into the transaction. Let's talk incentives on the ground. When carrying costs are low and expected scarcity is high, the rational strategy is to bank water when possible and release it only at premium moments. That's good finance and painful policy. It can reduce local farm jobs, raise rents on small growers who can't compete for leases, and pressure districts to prioritize transfer capacity over on-farm efficiency. The result isn't a villain story, it's a rule story. The rules reward hoarding during abundance and selective selling during stress. There's also a land flip angle. Acquire an older orchard with senior rights, fallow marginal blocks, upgrade the remainder, and market excess water to nearby users. You create multiple revenue lines, improved crop yields on best acres, and lease income from saved water. If a city wants permanence, you negotiate a long-term transfer at a premium. The sale price of the land can then reflect both agro potential and the capitalized value of water access. Now add funds and indices. Institutional capital here's essential, inflation-protected, low correlation, and starts packaging rights and farmland into portfolios. A few players specialize in Western water, advocating policy changes that openly enable trading across sectors. Their pitch is efficiency, move water to highest value use. The critique is displacement. Highest value bid isn't always aligned with food security or communities. Both can be true. Without guardrails for affordability, ecosystems, and farm viability, markets tilt toward whoever can pay when it's dry. The fix is not banning trades, it's designing them better. Price environmental flows into every transfer. Credit conserved water as valid use. Require third-party impact assessments so small growers aren't squeezed into extinction. Cap sudden interbasin moves that hollow out rural economies. And give cities cheaper reliability by funding leakage reduction first. The cheapest new water is the water you already pay to treat and then lose. We'll come back to policy. For now, lock this in. Buying the source turns drought into a pricing event. Agriculture becomes a portfolio lever. Cities pay for reliability through your bill. And ecosystems pay when rules ignore them. Once water is an asset class upstream, every downstream contract inherits that logic. Next, finance did what finance does. Built indices and futures to price the uncertainty itself. That changes behavior again. Financialization 2.0, water indices, futures, and funds. Once water rights became tradable and scarcity got a price, finance did the next logical thing. It built benchmarks and derivatives. Example, the Nasdaq Veles Water Index, NQH20, launched in 2018 as a benchmark of reported spot prices for California water rights transactions. CME Group listed cash-settled futures on that index in December 2020. There's no pipe attached, no tanker trucks, just a reference price. The point is to hedge budget risk without moving a single gallon. Why does an index exist? Utilities, large farms, and industrial users hate budget surprises. Drought spikes lease prices, floods collapse them. With an index future, a utility can lock in a ceiling on the price of reliability for a season. If the index jumps during a dry spell, the hedge pays out, offsetting higher real-world procurement costs. If it rains, they eat the premium but enjoy cheaper physical water. That's the hedge logic. Trade volatility for predictability. Institutions use this like airlines hedge jet fuel. A grower consortium might buy calls heading into a La Nina forecast. A municipality with fixed allocations could short the index if they're insulated from regional scarcity. Nobody owns water via the index. They're renting protection against bad seasons. But there's a subtle risk. Once there's a ticker, behavior can shift to protect the ticker. Public narratives begin to revolve around the index value. Budget officers, bond analysts, and counsels start anchoring to that line. When benchmarks anchor expectations, policy can drift toward market stability over deeper fixes like leak reduction or groundwater recharge. Here's how that creep shows up. A finance team hedges 2 summers. The board budgets off the forward curve. The leakage program slips because the hedge covers the risk. Hedges cover price moves. They don't repair pipes. 5 years later, non-revenue water is still high, and dependence on financial tools has grown. The shortcut: hedge to buy time to fix fundamentals. If you hedge and don't fix, you've layered finance on top of fragility. Now add funds. Portfolio managers pitch water exposure as an inflation hedge with low correlation and essential demand. You'll see baskets of investor-owned utilities, treatment tech, pipe manufacturers, and sometimes farmland with senior rights. Parts of that basket can be steady. The danger is capital chasing scarcity signals over solutions, backing strategies that monetize drought rather than reduce it. A second-order effect: if benchmark prices influence how rating agencies and lenders view revenue adequacy, utilities with weak leverage can feel pressure to raise rates faster to match the index. It's soft power, not law. If peers recover costs on index-like paths, and you don't, your coverage projections get questioned. Once rate covenants intersect with index expectations, affordability can be squeezed by a market narrative rather than physical necessity. A microstory: a regional wholesaler bought index protection after a dry year and scoped major leak detection and recycled water. Leadership changed. The hedge paid during 2 tight summers, so projects were deferred. A flood year hit. The hedge cost money, and the deferred fixes collided with storm damage. They issued more debt, paying for protection and for postponement. Lesson: derivatives can smooth the ride, but they can't drive the car. Remember, indices and futures are tools, not solutions. Use them to stabilize budgets while investing in leakage reduction, diversified sources, and storage, so reliance on the ticker shrinks each year. Contracts still decide your bill. Benchmarks shape the storyline around it. The contract trap: embedded escalators and control clauses. Before we continue, you need to understand where the leverage really lives. In the clauses that sound harmless until they compound. Start with debt service coverage covenants. You'll see language like maintain 1.25x coverage. If not, implement rates sufficient to restore coverage. Translation: if revenue dips, rates must rise automatically. No hearing needed beyond the mechanics. This is why conservation often gets repriced. If people save water and revenue falls, the covenant still demands its pound of flesh. Pass-through clauses are the next gear tooth. Chemicals, electricity, sludge disposal, even union wage adjustments. Material cost fluctuations flow straight to customers. The reason this matters is it strips the operator's exposure to input volatility. They're effectively guaranteed a margin, while the ratepayer holds the commodity risk. The thing most people miss is the stacking. You don't feel a single 2% bump. You feel CPI plus energy, plus chemicals, plus a compliance rider, all stepping up in tandem. Minimum revenue guarantees make it airtight. Some contracts or indentures specify a floor payment to the private partner or bondholders regardless of volumes. If drought, recession, or conservation pulls usage below forecast, a reliability or true-up fee fills the gap. It looks like stability, but it flips demand risk from investors to households. The shortcut here: search for availability payments, true-up, or minimum bill language. They're all versions of the same backstop. Non-compete and termination provisions lock the doors. You'll see clauses barring the city from bringing in alternative providers or self-performing overlapping services during the term. If the city terminates for convenience, it owes the net present value of remaining fees plus stranded investment and break costs. That exit check can be enormous. Now here's where most people mess up. They negotiate headline fees and KPIs, then accept boilerplate termination math that effectively removes public leverage after year 1. Arbitration and venue selection tilt the table. Disputes get routed to private arbitration, sometimes with limited discovery, short timelines, and damage caps. Venue might be out of state or tied to a sponsor-friendly rule set. It sounds efficient. In practice, it narrows remedies and keeps case law out of the public record. If you remember nothing else on dispute clauses, remember this: where you fight often decides whether you can afford to fight at all. Then there are reserve requirements. Debt agreements mandate operating and renewal and replacement reserves at specified months of coverage. On paper, that's prudence. In stress, those reserves must be topped up before discretionary maintenance. A city can end up cutting leak detection or delaying main replacements to restore reserves and coverage first. The reason this works for lenders is obvious. The consequence for reliability is subtle and delayed. Look closely at indexation mechanics. CPI is common, but which CPI? Urban CPIU? Regional CPI? Is there a floor like not less than 2%? Are there step-ups separate from CPI at milestone years? These tiny choices drive compounding. A floor turns low inflation years into guaranteed bumps. A cap might look like protection, but if caps reset annually rather than cumulatively, you can get catch-up escalations that surprise everyone. Service-level penalties are often presented as the consumer's shield. Miss a repair time KPI, pay a fee. But penalties are usually capped as a percent of the monthly service fee, not the total billings. If the cap is, say, 10% of a modest management fee, it's cheaper to pay penalties than to restaff a field crew. Here's the shortcut nobody teaches. Ask for penalties that scale with total revenue at risk, or tie them to rate relief, not a fixed fee pool. Watch for technology lock-in. Data ownership, software licensing, and API access terms can create de facto monopolies. If meter data sits on a vendor's cloud with restricted export rights, rebidding operations won't shake their grip. You'll pay transition services and migration tolls. Negotiate data portability, open standards, and escrow for critical code upfront. Otherwise, even a public retake leaves you paying rent on your own information. Another sleeper, change in law and force majeure. Reasonable in concept, deadly in detail. If any new regulation increases costs, the pass-through may be automatic and immediate. If climate events trigger force majeure, performance obligations relax while availability payments keep flowing. The balance can be fair, but only if you define what's truly unforeseeable and require shared cost thresholds before full pass-throughs apply. Now let me connect this back to your bill. Picture a stress year: hot, dry, expensive power. Demand drops from conservation appeals, electricity costs rise, chemical inputs jump, and a PFAS rule adds a compliance project. The covenant forces a rate hike to restore coverage. Pass-throughs add surcharges. The minimum revenue guarantee fills any remaining gap. Penalties don't bite because they're capped. Arbitration, not open court, handles disputes over meter errors. Your household does everything right and still pays more. That's not malfunction, that's design. So how do you disarm the trap? You don't need magic, you need clauses. Replace strict coverage-triggered hikes with glide paths and affordability carve-outs. Prioritize first call, dollars for maintenance and leakage in drought years before discretionary transfers. Cap pass-throughs with shared risk bands and efficiency obligations. Convert penalties into bill credits, not vendor IOUs. Mandate public disclosure of all schedules, and forbid arbitration that blocks injunctive relief or hides outcomes. Finally, put exit math on a diet. Hard caps on termination payments, no non-competes that outlive poor performance, and data portability by default. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Read the schedules, not the press release. The escalators, pass-throughs, guarantees, venue, and exit math are the true rate plan. Once you see them, you can negotiate them. And when you negotiate them, you protect both service and affordability when the next dry year hits. Winners, losers, and perverse incentives. Now that you can spot the clauses, let's talk about who they reward. Winners first. Concessionaires and outsourced operators win because their margins are insulated. Pass-throughs shift input volatility to customers, while management fees and performance bonuses remain intact. Debt holders win because coverage covenants hardwire priority repayment. In a stress year, households conserve but rates rise to defend the ratio. Exactly what bond indentures are designed to ensure. Index and infrastructure funds win because they get predictable, inflation-linked cash flows that look steady in a portfolio even when service frustrations spike on the ground. Who pays? Low-income households, small farmers, and municipalities with weak leverage. In cities already facing housing and wage pressure, a compounding water bill isn't just annoying, it squeezes budgets toward crisis. Shutoffs, liens, or debt arrangements become more common when arrears mount. For small growers, transfer pricing and dry year lease premiums can flip margins negative, pushing consolidation toward larger, better capitalized players who can hold rights and time the market. Municipalities pay when termination math or arbitration constraints trap them in underperforming structures they can't afford to exit. Now, here's the uncomfortable core: perverse incentives. Leakage reduction is often the cheapest new water, but it can conflict with near-term financial metrics. If every conserved gallon softens revenue and triggers a coverage headache, the path of least resistance is to reprice conservation instead of eliminating losses. Likewise, resilience investments, like storage, reuse, or decentralization, pay back over years, while covenants and schedules demand this year's ratio. That time mismatch pushes utilities to prioritize financial compliance over physical reliability. The thing most people miss is how KPI design can entrench mediocrity. If penalties are capped at a small slice of a management fee, then paying the cap can be cheaper than hiring more crews or replacing brittle mains. If regulatory compliance metrics dominate, operators can score well by upgrading treatment while letting distribution losses linger, because the dashboard looks green and the covenant is safe. The result is legally tidy, financially tidy, and operationally fragile. Public health sits in that gap. When budgets tighten, corners can get cut in ways that don't immediately show up on a compliance chart. Slower response times, longer boil water advisories after line breaks, or reduced sampling frequency within the allowable minimums. Shutoff practices often become more aggressive to protect revenue, even though evidence shows they disproportionately harm low-income and vulnerable residents. Assistance programs help, but without stable funding, they're easily overwhelmed by compounding rates and surcharges. Let me give you a quick micro-story that I've seen play out. A city facing a dry year and rising power costs delayed a leak detection sweep to preserve operating reserves and keep coverage on side. On paper, they met every financial covenant. 3 months later, 2 aging mains ruptured during a heat wave. Emergency overtime, water loss, and damage payouts wiped out the savings. What looked prudent in the covenant stack was reckless in the pipe stack. Once again, the schedules shaped the decision, and the system paid the price. Why does this keep working? Because demand is inelastic and regulatory fog favors contract certainty over public flexibility. Households can't substitute water. Farmers can't irrigate with promises. When the rules move risk uphill to customers and taxpayers, the investor side sees durable profits even in volatile climates. That doesn't make operators villains. It makes incentives misaligned. If you pay for financial compliance first, you'll reliably get financial compliance first. There are broader market ripples, too. Once benchmarks and investor expectations anchor around steady escalators, it becomes politically harder to pause or roll back rates, even when efficiency gains materialize. Boards fear spooking lenders or jeopardizing future financing. So the safer move is to bank the gains and keep the glide path. Over time, that erodes trust. People feel like conservation is punished and reliability is optional. Okay, so what flips the incentives? You rewrite priority. Make maintenance and leakage first call during stress, ahead of discretionary transfers. Tie performance fees to net water saved and outage minutes avoided, not just treatment compliance. Replace rigid coverage-triggered spike clauses with glide paths that include affordability carve-outs and pre-funded buffers. And change penalty math so it credits ratepayers directly when service misses occur, aligning the operator's pocket with the public's. Experience. If you remember nothing else from this section, remember this: cash flow design shapes behavior. Winners are the parties whose income is insulated by pass-throughs, coverage ratios, and exit math. Losers are the users whose consumption is essential and whose budgets can't flex. Perverse incentives grow wherever financial dashboards outrank physical resilience. Fix the order of operations, and you change the outcomes. Better models, public, cooperative, and hybrid paths. Now let's flip the incentives without starving maintenance. You don't need a unicorn model. You need structure that protects affordability, prioritizes resilience, and still funds upgrades on time. There are 3 families that work: well-run public with teeth, true cooperative ownership, and hybrids that bring expertise without surrendering control. Start with performance-based public management. This isn't leave it to City Hall. It's public delivery with transparent KPIs and hard schedules published quarterly. The thing most people miss is that good public utilities already beat private peers when governance is tight. Clear targets on leakage, outage minutes, customer response, and unit operating cost, plus a rule that the board must publicly explain misses and corrective actions. Tie leadership bonuses to net water saved and reliability, not rate growth. And build a first-call budget rule. In declared stress years, dollars flow to leak reduction, pressure management, and repair backlogs before discretionary transfers. Public-public partnerships are next. Instead of hiring a concessionaire, pair with a high-performing municipal or regional utility to share playbooks, crews, lab capacity, and procurement. You get expertise, common standards, and joint training without handing away rate authority. The shortcut nobody teaches. Create shared service agreements with opt-out windows, not 30-year monoliths. Bundle joint purchasing for chemicals, pipe, and meters to cut costs. Stand up a regional emergency crew pool so burst repairs don't lag, because one city's overtime budget is tapped. Community co-ops change alignment entirely. When customers are members, there's no incentive to extract margin. Rates track costs plus prudent reserves. Boards are locally elected with term limits. The risk here is weak capacity, so bake in independent audits, technical advisors, and mandatory board training. Use affordability tiers by income or lifeline volume so essential use, say, 50 to 75 gallons per person per day, stays cheap, while high discretionary use steps up. The reason this works is simple. When members feel increases, they also see the books. Hybrid models bring private skill without private rate control. One version is design, build, maintain with a capped, time-limited O&M contract. The city sets rates, owns all data, and can rebid maintenance every 5 to 7 years. Another is a performance contract tied to leakage or energy savings. Pay vendors from verified savings, not from escalators. If they miss targets, they earn less. If they outperform, they share the upside. That aligns incentives to fix physical losses, not to pass through costs. Funding matters. Replace private covenants with green bonds that voters approve, coupled with statutory guardrails. Spell out that debt service can't force automatic rate spikes without an affordability test, and that maintenance gets first call during drought declarations. Require citizen oversight committees that review spend by project, not broad categories. Publish project dashboards with forecast versus actual cost, completion dates, and expected water saved. The game changer here is transparency that ordinary people can read, not 200-page PDFs. Data-led leakage programs are your cheapest new supply. Commit to district-metered areas, pressure management, and acoustic correlation surveys. Set annual reduction targets with penalties for missing them and bonuses for beating them. Paid to in-house teams or vendors, not to balance sheets. The payoff shows up fast. Lower non-revenue water means fewer gallons treated and lost, stabilizing bills without new sources. Tie this to energy optimization, so pump schedules follow time-of-use pricing and pressure stays within safe bands to reduce bursts. Guardrails are non-negotiable. Put affordability tiers into rate ordinances with automatic enrollment via existing benefit programs. Set shutoff moratoriums for medically vulnerable households and families below a defined income threshold, replacing blunt shutoffs with debt management and bill smoothing. Create hardship funds financed by a tiny system-wide surcharge and matching philanthropic or state dollars, administered with simple rules and minimal paperwork. The point isn't to erase responsibility. It's to prevent a small arrear from turning into a public health crisis. Technology should serve you, not trap you. Mandate open standards for meters, APIs for billing and SCADA data, and full data. Portability. Escrow critical software and require key staff to be cross-trained. If a vendor leaves, you keep your data and your continuity. Couple that with cyber drills and incident response agreements across regional partners so one breach doesn't cascade. Governance is where these models live or die. Insulate boards from day-to-day politics with staggered terms, but keep them accountable with recall mechanisms and regular public briefings. Publish every contract schedule, every escalator, and every KPI in plain language. Run annual bill math. Nights where the utility walks residents through how rates are set, why reserves exist, and what projects unlocked savings. When people understand the machine, they support the right fixes. Finally, sequence the work. Stabilize operations, attack leakage, diversify supply with reuse and capture, then expand. Hedge budgets only to buy time to execute those steps, not as a substitute. If you remember nothing else here, remember rates, access, transparency, equity. Keep rates predictable, ensure access with lifelines and moratoriums, make every clause visible, and hardwire equity into both pricing and project choice. Do that, and you fund resilience without turning your tap into someone else's annuity. Policy guardrails that actually work. We've fixed incentives at the utility level. Now we need laws that backstop those fixes everywhere. Think of these guardrails as pre-commitments that prevent bad clauses from sneaking into deals and force money to go where resilience actually comes from. Start with the long-term deal problem. Ban or cap concessions for essential utilities at 10 to 15 years, with hard midterm review points and no automatic renewals. Require independent value-for-money assessments that compare any private bid to a public-public or co-op alternative. And force rebid windows at year 7 so no vendor assumes perpetual incumbency. That time cap restores leverage and keeps exit math from ballooning. Debt covenants are next. Prohibit rate covenants that override affordability protections. If a bond indenture says raise rates to 1.25x coverage, the statute must also say subject to affordability standards and glide path limits. Replace hard triggers with pre-funded rate stabilization reserves and multi-year recovery plans that prioritize maintenance. Require covenant language that explicitly designates leak reduction, emergency repairs, and water quality as first call uses of revenue during declared stress, before discretionary transfers or bonuses. Sunshine is non-negotiable. Pass comprehensive disclosure laws. Publish full contracts, schedules, indexation formulas, reserve rules, and arbitration clauses in a searchable portal before votes. Mandate side-by-side bill math, showing 10-year customer impacts under base, drought, and inflation scenarios. Require an independent technical and financial review with plain language summaries that any resident can read in 5 minutes. And put audit dashboards online. Leakage, outage minutes, repair times, affordability enrollments, and collections activity, updated quarterly. Maintenance before money. Write first call for maintenance into law. In droughts or emergencies, funds must flow first to leak detection, pressure management, and break repairs. Defer non-critical transfers and performance bonuses until those KPIs are on target. Pair that with statutory caps on non-revenue water. If a system sits above an established threshold, a mandatory corrective plan kicks in, funded ahead of other flex spending. Affordability standards keep households in the system. Set income-based caps, like limiting essential water costs to a manageable share of household income for qualifying residents, and define lifeline volumes that are priced at the lowest tier. Automatically enroll eligible households using existing benefit program data matches to cut paperwork. Create statewide or regional water assistance funds to stabilize local programs during recessions, funded by small system-wide surcharges plus state dollars. Now modernize water rights without breaking communities. Reform, use it or lose it, so conservation counts as use. Encourage trading with equity guardrails, third-party impact reviews, environmental flow set-asides, and protections for small growers. Cap rapid interbasin transfers. Require public pricing transparency for major transfers and channel a portion of proceeds into local resilience, canal lining, soil moisture monitoring, on-farm efficiency, and groundwater recharge. Tame pass-throughs. Allow reasonable pass-through of major inputs, but add shared risk bands and performance conditions. For example, the first band of energy or chemical spikes is absorbed or shared if the operator misses leakage or energy intensity targets. The second band can pass through with verified documentation. Beyond that, commission review is automatic. Tie any compliance surcharge to sunsets and measurable milestones with a hard reauthorization vote. Arbitration and venue shouldn't hide the ball. For essential utilities, default venue should be in-state courts, with public access to filings and outcomes. If arbitration is used, require open records, uncapped remedies for systemic overbilling or data failures, and the ability for regulators to intervene. Bar provisions that restrict injunctive relief when public health is at risk. Protect data and interoperability. Pass data portability laws. Meter and billing data belong to the utility and its customers, with export in open formats, API access, and escrowed code for critical systems. Outlaw vendor lock-in that penalizes migration. Require independent cybersecurity audits and incident reporting, so one breach doesn't get buried under NDAs. Strengthen local control without parochial blind spots. Create regional mutual aid compacts with standardized rates for emergency labor and gear, pre-cleared procurement, and shared inventories. This keeps response times tight when budgets are strained. At the same time, seek community representatives, tenants, senior advocates, small growers, on governing boards with real votes not advisory-only roles, so affordability and equity aren't afterthoughts. Financing needs. Discipline. Authorize green bonds with voter oversight and statutory affordability tests. Prohibit capital structures that put availability payments senior to maintenance in stress years. Build a permanent rate stabilization reserve sized to your system's historical volatility and climate outlook, and require transparent triggers for drawdown and replenishment so the reserve isn't rated for vanity projects. Finally, enforcement. A guardrail without teeth is a suggestion. Tie executive compensation to leakage, outage minutes, and affordability enrollment, not rate growth. Impose escalating penalties on utilities, public or private, that hide schedules, miss disclosure deadlines, or exceed non-revenue water caps without an approved plan. Direct penalties into bill credits or resilience funds, not general coffers. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Guardrails must hardwire priority. Maintenance first, transparency always, affordability protected, and contracts that can't outrank public health. Put those in law, and you lower bills over time by cutting losses, not by cutting corners. How to audit your city's water deal. All right, let's turn this into action. You don't need a law degree. You need a checklist and patience. Start by pulling documents. Ask your city clerk, water utility, or procurement office for the RFP, the winning proposal, the final contract, every schedule and appendix, any amendments, and the bond prospectus or private placement memo if debt is involved. If they say summary available, say, I need full schedules. The escalators hide there, not in the press release. Next, build a simple folder with 5 tabs: rates, covenants, pass-throughs, penalties, termination. In rates, find the indexation formula. Is it CPIU, regional CPI, or a fixed floor like not less than 2%? Note any step-ups at milestone years. In covenants, highlight the debt service coverage ratio and the cure mechanism. If you see maintain 1.25x coverage or implement rates sufficient to restore coverage, flag it. In pass-throughs, list every input: chemicals, energy, carts and sludge, union wage adjustments, and whether there's a cap or shared risk band. In penalties, capture the cap math. Is it tied to the management fee or total revenue? In termination, read the exit payment formula and any non-compete. Now spot the escalators. Search the contract for CPI, index, adjustment, step-up, and surcharge. Then look for true-up, minimum bill, availability payment, and shortfall. Those usually signal minimum revenue guarantees. If surcharges exist for regulatory compliance, note whether they sunset automatically or require a vote to extend. Check if any escalators have floors. Floors compound even in low inflation years. Open the bond prospectus or private debt memo. Find rate covenant, additional bonds test, reserve requirements, and flow of funds. Draw the waterfall: gross revenues, operations and maintenance, debt service, reserves, renewal and replacement, then surplus. In stress years, does maintenance sit above or below reserve top-ups? If reserves must be replenished before non-emergency maintenance, that's a risk to reliability. Benchmark performance. Pull your utility's latest audit or performance report. Write down non-revenue water percentage, average repair times, outage minutes, water quality violations, and customer complaint rates. Compare to promises in the RFP or contract KPIs. If leakage is above, say, 15 to 20% and not dropping, yet rates are climbing, that mismatch is your talking point. Also check how many households are enrolled in affordability programs versus estimated eligible. Low enrollment can signal barriers. Check the arbitration and venue. If disputes are forced into private arbitration with capped damages, note it. Ask your counsel to require public reporting of outcomes and uncapped remedies for systemic issues like overbilling or meter failures. Now trace one clause to your bill. Pick a pass-through, electricity, for example. Pull the utility's power cost change from the public record, then apply the pass-through formula to a typical household bill. Map it year by year against CPI escalators and any compliance surcharge. You'll see the staircase. This is your micro-audit. A single clause, 5 years, a real bill journey. Look for privatization by maintenance. Scan capital plans. Are main replacements slipping while dashboard-friendly plant upgrades accelerate? Are leak detection sweeps deferred to meet reserve targets? If yes, that's covenant pressure bleeding into operations. Tie it back to the waterfall. Run 3 scenarios. Base case, CPI at recent trend, no drought. Stress case: low volumes, high power prices, new compliance project. Recovery case: after stress, how fast do rates come down, or do floors keep them elevated? Present this as 3 lines on a simple chart at a council meeting. Visuals beat rhetoric. Now you try. Grab 1 contract, 1 clause, and 1 bill. Document the math. Post your findings publicly with citations to page and section numbers. Invite the utility to respond. Most staff are honest and overworked. Good ones appreciate accurate critiques because it gives them leverage to renegotiate raw clauses. Finally, build an ask list, not a complaint. Request: publish all schedules online, adopt a first call maintenance rule, cap pass-throughs with shared risk bands, add glide paths to coverage triggers, and convert penalties into automatic bill credits. Ask for a quarterly bill math briefing. The goal isn't drama, it's alignment. When you make the math visible, you make better deals inevitable. Household Playbook: protect your bill and build resilience. Let's shift from city contracts to your kitchen table. You can't rewrite covenants tonight, but you can cut exposure and buy yourself breathing room. Think of this as a 2-track plan. Lower the gallons you pay premium prices for, and harden your budget against surcharges and dry year spikes. Start with your tier structure. Pull your last 12 months of bills and chart usage by month. Find the breakpoint where your rate jumps to the next tier. Your job is to keep average use just under that line. 2 quick moves help. Shift discretionary loads to low-demand days and times if your utility has time of use or seasonal tiers, and spread out big water tasks. For example, irrigate early morning, not evenings, and avoid running laundry and dishwasher the same day if you're flirting with a tier threshold. Now test for leaks. This is the fastest ROI you'll ever see. Turn off all fixtures, check your meter's leak indicator. If it's spinning, you're paying for water you don't use. Die-test toilets. Silent flappers waste hundreds of gallons a month. Replace with adjustable flappers and dual flush kits. Swap shower heads to 1.5 to 1.8 GPM. Modern ones feel fine. Aerate faucets to 1 GPM in bathrooms, 1.5 GPM in kitchens. Track pre/post bills to verify savings. If your utility offers free kits or rebates, grab them. Many do. Irrigation is where tiers get you. Convert thirsty spray zones to drip for beds and trees. Install a simple pressure regulator and filter on drip lines so emitters don't clog and push you back to waste. Add a smart controller or at least a rain/soil moisture shutoff. Watering in the rain is paying to grow algae on your sidewalk. Group plants by water need. Turf and natives don't belong on the same schedule. If you keep a lawn, raise mower height and mulch to reduce evapotranspiration. Inside, hit the big 3: toilets, showers, washers. A high-efficiency washer can cut use by 30 to 50% per load. If a new unit isn't in the cards, run full loads and use eco-cycles. For dishwashers, scrape, don't pre-rinse. Modern machines are designed for it and save gallons. Fix dripping faucets now. A drip per second is roughly 2,000 gallons a year. That's a tier jump in some schedules. Consider rain capture and gray water, where legal. Before you buy barrels, check local codes and HOA rules. Many places allow rain barrels and laundry-to-landscape systems without permits. Some require simple notification. Start with roof-first barrel calculus. 1 inch of rain on 1,000 square feet yields about 600 gallons. Use barrels for drip irrigation of beds, not potable uses. For gray water, the low-tech WIN is a diverter from your laundry to a mulch basin network. No storage, no pumping, no soap with salts or boron. If unsure, talk to your city's water conservation office. Many have guides. Renters aren't powerless. Negotiate with your landlord for fixture upgrades. Offer a split savings deal. You'll coordinate low-flow fixtures and aerators. They pay parts. You share documented bill savings for a set period, or they recoup through reduced water/sewer charges. Many utilities offer free direct install programs. Let your landlord know it increases property value and reduces where on plumbing. Budget like Scarcity is normal. Build a utilities buffer equal to 1 to 2 average bills in a separate savings bucket. Label it rates plus drought. When surcharges or seasonal hikes hit, you don't scramble. If you're eligible for affordability programs or payment plans, enroll now before arrears snowball. And set alerts. Many utilities text when bills are posted or usage spikes. Catch a running toilet in a day, not a month. Community actions multiply savings. Organize a block-level audit weekend. One person handles meter checks, another does dye tests, another installs aerators. Share a thermal camera or acoustic leak listener if someone has one. Together, you'll find the big leaks fast. Then approach your utility as a group to request a district metered area assessment and pressure management on your block. Lower, stable pressure reduces bursts and indoor leaks. Your bill and the system both win. For irrigation-heavy properties, run a monthly 5-minute meter test. Record the meter, run only irrigation for 5 minutes, record again, and log gallons. Per zone. If a zone's flow climbs month over month without plant growth, you've got leaks. Fix emitters or lateral lines before the next billing cycle. Prep for shutoffs and boil water advisories. Store at least 1 gallon per person per day for 3 days, plus pet needs. Keep basic filters and a camping stove or kettle. If your area has frequent advisories, a point-of-use filter certified for microbiological reduction gives peace of mind. Don't overbuy fancy systems. Certification and maintenance matter more than marketing. Small business owners, audit pre-rinse spray valves, cooling systems, and process water. A 1.1 GPM pre-rinse valve with an auto-off handle can save thousands of gallons a month in food service. Install auto shut-off nozzles on hoses. If you use once-through cooling, explore closed-loop retrofits. Utilities often rebate these with fast paybacks. Finally, track and celebrate your reductions. Create a simple spreadsheet. Month, gallons, cost, key changes. When you see a 15 to 30% drop, you'll stick with it. Share your wins at council bill math nights. Nothing moves policy faster than a neighborhood that cut usage without pain but still saw surcharges. Proof that contracts, not waste, drive the hike. Your household is resilient. Now push for systems that reward it. Droughts, floods, and the profit cycle. Let's connect weather to cash flow, because this is where volatility turns into revenue. In this system, droughts and floods are not just emergencies, they're profit events. Not because anyone roots for disaster, but because contracts, covenants, and risk markets are designed to monetize uncertainty. Here's the cadence. A drought hits. Consumption falls from conservation appeals. Energy costs climb as pumps work harder and treatment concentrates. Pass-through clauses activate. Coverage covenants demand rate hikes. A reliability surcharge appears to backfill minimum revenue guarantees. Budgets tighten, maintenance slips, and shut-off policies get stricter to reduce arrears. The narrative is we all must do our part. But the math says bondholders and concessionaires get their part first. Then a flood. Over time, emergency repairs, contamination events, and sludge handling spike costs. Force majeure provisions relax service obligations while availability payments continue. Insurance and reinsurance layers reimburse some damage, but deductibles and exclusions push residual costs onto ratepayers. The aftermath brings resiliency program debt, new bonds for hardening, bigger reserves, and upgraded control systems. Rate smoothing spreads the spike across years, so the pain feels manageable while the total cost quietly ratchets higher. Rate smoothing deserves a closer look. Instead of a 20% jump this year, you see 6% for 4 straight years. It's less politically explosive, but the area under the curve can equal or exceed the unsmoothed shock. Meanwhile, CPI floors, pass-through bans, and compliance surcharges keep marching. People think the crisis passed. The escalators disagree. Insurance is sold as protection, and it is, but watch the flow of risk. Utilities pay premiums funded by rates. Reinsurers price climate trends and raise premiums after events. Deductibles widen. When coverage gaps appear, utilities either self-insure via larger reserves, again, funded by rates, or borrow post-event. Either way, risk migrates up to households over time. The thing most people miss is that the same volatility that raises premiums can also validate higher financial returns for investors because the contracts guarantee recovery. Now for the game changer. Resilience upgrades reduce volatility more than they reduce averages. That's the lever you want. Pressure management, district metering, accelerated leak detection, and diversified sources. Reuse, capture, managed recharge don't always slash average bills immediately, but they shrink the amplitude of bad years. Fewer bursts during heat waves. Lower non-revenue water when power prices surge. Shorter boil water advisories after storms. Those avoided spikes cut the need for emergency debt and special surcharges, which is where long-term affordability lives. Where do people mess this up? Chasing cheap water while ignoring risk premiums. A city might buy low-cost spot transfers in wet years and boast about savings, then get hammered when the market tightens. Or lock in a vendor promising low O&M today while accepting pass-throughs and coverage triggers that explode under stress. The headline price isn't the total price. Volatility cost is real cost. Here's a quick micro-story. A coastal utility kept postponing a reuse project because desal grants looked shinier. After 2 flood years, salinity intrusions and storm damage forced emergency desal rentals at punitive rates, plus trucking and overtime. The reuse project would have cost less over a decade and cushioned both drought and flood. They optimized for average supply cost, not variance. The premium for cheap now became expensive forever. So what's the quick win you can push for right now? Advocate for leakage reduction and supply diversification before expansions. If your system's non-revenue water is above a reasonable threshold, demand a published, funded plan with quarterly targets. Pair it with small, modular additions, neighborhood-scale reuse for irrigation, stormwater capture feeding managed aquifer recharge, and interties with neighboring systems for mutual aid. These moves won't headline a ribbon cutting like a megaplant, but they'll flatten your bill's roller coaster. Tie financing to resilience outcomes, not just assets. Structure bonds with milestones. Tranche releases when leakage drops, outage minutes fall, or storage buffers improve. Build rate stabilization reserves sized to real climate volatility and put guardrails on their use. Draw in declared stress, replenish over smooth periods, no rating for unrelated projects. And decouple conservation from revenue shocks with pre-approved glide paths, so saving water doesn't backfire as a surprise spike. If you remember nothing else here, remember this: resilience pays in variance, not just in averages. Contracts and covenants monetize extremes unless you pre-commit to cut losses first. Push for the boring wins. Leakage, pressure, reuse, storage, because they're the only things that make the next drought or flood a line item instead of a lifelong surcharge. Red flags and green lights checklist. Let's finish with a fast, practical checklist you can use tomorrow. Think rate, rates, access, transparency, equity as your filter. Share this with a neighbor and bring it to your next council meeting. Red flags first. 20 to 30-year concessions are a big one. Long terms lock in escalators and make exits painful. Pair that with CPI plus formulas, especially floors like not less than 2%, and you've got built-in compounding. Add minimum revenue guarantees, availability payments, or true-up clauses and demand risk moves to ratepayers. If you see all three, expect a staircase bill. Another red flag: venue clauses forcing private arbitration with capped damages or out-of-state venues. That limits public remedies and hides precedent. Aggressive non-competes and transition services that charge heavy tolls to switch vendors are red flags too. They turn underperformance into a trap. Watch for tech lock-in, meter data stuck in proprietary clouds, restricted APIs, and no data portability. If you can't export clean data, you don't control your system. Rate covenants that trigger automatic hikes to hit a coverage ratio without affordability carve-outs are red flags. So are pass-through clauses with no shared risk bands, letting chemicals, energy, and labor costs flow straight through even when efficiency targets aren't met. Service penalties capped at a small slice of the management fee are another. They're budgeted as a cost of doing business and won't change behavior. Now the green lights. Public audits and plain language disclosures of every schedule and escalator are a strong signal. If your city publishes a bill math explainer and quarterly KPI dashboards, leakage, outage minutes, repair times, affordability enrollment, you're starting from trust. Affordability caps tied to income and lifeline volumes keep essentials protected. Automatic enrollment via data matches with existing benefit programs is a green light for access. Leakage targets with penalties that scale to total revenue or convert directly into bill credits are excellent. Pair those with performance bonuses for beating targets, and you align incentives toward resilience, not pass-throughs. Public-public partnerships and regional mutual aid compacts are green lights when they include opt-out windows, shared procurement, and joint training. They bring skill without surrendering rate authority. Local governance seats for tenants, seniors, and small growers help center equity. Transparent KPIs that weight net water saved in outage minutes, not just treatment compliance. Keep eyes on real service. Green bonds with voter oversight and guardrails. Maintenance first in stress years. Affordability tests on any rate action. Signal a financing stack built for reliability. Here's your rapid memory device in action. Rates. Beware CPI floors, minimum revenue guarantees, and automatic coverage triggers. Look for glide paths, stabilization reserves, and caps on pass-throughs with shared risk bands. Access. Shut off moratoriums for vulnerable households, lifeline volumes, and easy enrollment. Watch for aggressive collections clauses and deposit demands after missed bills. Transparency. Full contracts and schedules online, plain language bill math, quarterly KPI dashboards. Red flag if you're told proprietary, about core terms. Equity. Seats for affected communities, third-party impacts for transfers, and penalties that become bill credits. Red flag if penalties just recycle into vendor accounts. 3 questions to ask at council meetings. Where exactly are the escalators? Name the CPI variant, any floors, step-ups, and all pass-throughs, with examples on a typical bill over 5 years. What's first called during stress, debt service, or maintenance? Show the flow of funds waterfall, reserve rules, and drought year prioritization in writing. How do missed KPIs benefit customers, not the vendor? Are penalties tied to total revenue and converted into automatic bill credits? And are leakage and outage targets enforceable? If you hear hedged answers, push for published schedules, rate action guardrails, and data portability clauses. You're not anti-investment. You're pro-incentives that protect reliability and affordability. Force the math into daylight and bring a friend. Key takeaway. Water gets expensive when contracts hardwire escalators and pass-throughs. You fix it by reprioritizing maintenance, transparency, and affordability in the fine print. If you want the farmland version of this playbook, how water rights deals squeeze growers and shape your grocery bill, watch the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up, where we audit a real water contract clause by clause and rebuild it with rate guardrails.